Is Nattramn slash Silencer a hoax? This has been a very long debated thing in the black metal community, with a lot of people adamantly defending the fact that yes, it is correct, it is true, and loving to believe the hype of all the mystery and intrigue of the project. There's an equal, if not bigger, amount of people that say that it is a hoax and that it was fake.
Sometimes, the concept of anonymity is the sole thing that can propel a black metal project, specifically a solo one, into the notoriety it gains, and the music almost seems to come second to it. This cult of personality comes out of sorts, but eventually most of the illusion will break away and the identity will come to the forefront in the end. But to this day, like some sort of weird ARG, people are still trying to dissect the identity of this project. And with how long it passed, the conflicting evidence of what had happened or what hadn't, or the misinformation that had been spread by people on the internet, there had been some concerns raised of what Nattramn even embodied, or if it was all just fake.
Death Pierce Me by Silencer has one of the most iconic album arts, one of the most iconic stories, and is just a crown jewel for the DSBM movement in general. So in this video, I wanted to go over a little bit of the history and let you guys make your own judgment of if you think Nattramn is a hoax or not. Because while there is some irrefutable evidence to suggest that, yes, there are a lot of things that were either over-exaggerated or were flat out wrong, there are some things that are technically true, but a little bit different than how they were put in the first place. A big part of the mystery of Nattramn is just how little was known about his identity for the longest time. This has later been kind of discovered and pretty well known.
Mikael Nilsson, to those who have claimed fakeness, is the name of the originator of this project. Not only this, but he has his own record label, HAL. Practically the only website that exists is a cryptic one with not much to it. You enter it and are met with, "You are at the heart of non-human arts." And if you go to Concept, you are met with some strange ramblings written back in 2009, and as you might expect, the whole place has an eerie and nostalgic sort of design and is ultimately very dated. HAL is the religious theory and practice movement as well as publishing form of Nattramn, of Diagnose Lebensgefahr, and Silencer. The sole essence of HAL is to return to our Heavenly Father of the cosmic circle and to ultimately reach cosmic solution and the level beyond human. And if you keep reading, it just keeps going on and on and on. There is a sort of amateur level of concept to the whole thing, and I think the time that this was created definitely played a big role in it. Thematically, Nattramn is clearly a hoax in many regards. A lot of it was just played up, but I feel like the thing no one can really doubt is that Mikael was a very troubled person and someone that had a lot going on in his mind. You might have noticed that Nattramm actually has a book, a poetry book, ranging 156 pages. Grishharta, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is a Swedish word that translates to pig's heart in English. It was a limited edition book by Nattramn. There were no pre-orders, there was really no rollout other than like a little bit of an announcement, and it was released in 2011. The book contained a bunch of poetry, artwork, and photography, and had illustrations by Kostin Chio Renew, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and there were poems in it that were both English and Swedish. There are claims that the book was edited by Nattramn himself between the late 90s going into the early 2010s, and some say that he himself was the one to translate the poems into English. It's 156 pages and practically what you would expect based on the text on the website, just some dark, forlorn poetry. It's pretty transcendental, but the rabbit hole doesn't end there, because in 2022, a Swedish project by the name Grishharta materialized with next to no information surrounding it, releasing a single, then a demo, and in 2023 an EP by the name of Narcomantic. It's been fairly prolific for its short stint already. Immediately people took the internet to claim this had to be Nattram's return to music. It was too coincidental, both where it came from as well as the very specific name. It was an independent project in the DSBM tradition whose theme surrounded some very morbid topics, not the least of which being self-harm and drug use, both of which Silencer was known for taking severe interest in, both physically and literally. Unfortunately, there has yet to be any evidence to suggest that this is or isn't Nattramn, and if Silencer had little information about it, Grishharta piles on that mystery even more so.
And for the longest time, the only sort of visualization we had or image was the photography taken for Silencer. Now, there are some self-release photos later down the line that always had his face sort of blacked out, and he always added to that intrigue of it. The stuff for Silencer, he always had like a face full of like bandages and just a body full of all these bloody bandages. But I want to address like all of the rumors and things that pretty much make Silencer and Nattramn what they were at the time. And if you're not someone that doesn't want some of of the fun, I guess, taken away from the project and you want to live in ignorance, definitely click off this video, but if you want to know the truth of a lot of shit, keep watching. I don't want to be the one to ruin the fun, but there's been a lot of things throughout this timeline that has been pointed in the direction of intrigue, whether that be him cutting off his hands and replacing it with pig's feet, him literally axe murdering like a 6-year-old girl or something, him being unwillingly taken away to a mental institution and no one knew what happened to him. And as I said at the start, multiple of these things are true, but they happened a lot different. The pig's feet thing, it is a complete hoax. He never cut off his hands. You would bleed out, the injuries, the shock of it would not be able to be bared, and just in general, it has been proven that that is a hoax. That did not happen. The rumor with it is that he went to a playground with an axe and ended up burying it in the head of a 6-year-old girl, brutally murdering her, but that is not the case. But I will say, that did occur. It just wasn't him, it was his brother. His brother was the one that murdered a 6-year-old girl at a playground with an axe. This just got attributed to Nattramn, but that is not the case. He never did that. His brother, the one that was caught in a psychotic rage and killed a child, took his life thereafter due to coming to the realization of his actions. This is supposed, and in the end, you can make your own judgments on it. And well, Mikhail just never got over that, as you wouldn't if someone in your family did that, let alone took their life right after. Black metal, specifically this breed of black metal, is very afflicted with people who have deep mental issues, people who have struggled with things, and in the end, a lot of these people are dealing with a lot of demons that we'll never see, and so that kind of just adds to the intrigue of it, especially considering all the notorious things about self-harm, the images, and things of that nature. Nothing has really come thereafter. One of the truths of Nattramn is that he self-harmed during the recording of Death Pierce Me. This is true. Unlike a lot of the visualizations that you can really prove against, people that know what self-harm looks like, as well as people who have dived deep into the chronological order of Nattram's events, as well as the promotional imagery for Death Pierce Me, have over time found that you could not fake that with makeup or anything, and especially with that limited amount of a budget. He absolutely did self-harm during that. To what degree, it is unknown, because some of them could have been fresh, some of them could have been old, some of them could have been over-exaggerated or whatever it may be. Also, whether or not he self-harmed specifically for those images, or if he self-harmed during the recording of that material, that is unknown, because the whole thing is that he wanted to make it more emphasized and more tortured and banshee wail and make his vocals sound even more pained and make it literal, so he self-harmed during the recording process. But it is unknown, and it will always be unknown whether or not he did that during the recording of the record, or if that was something he did after for the promotional material. He was not dragged away to the mental hospital. No one had him admitted because they were worried about him or him being a danger. He voluntarily went to the mental hospital because he was struggling with very deep mental problems. He was a very troubled individual, and he also was struggling recently with suicidal ideation and had been for quite some time, and so he was worried for himself and his own safety, so he put himself into the mental hospital to try to get better and to just keep him away from hurting himself. And I never know how to pronounce this, but he also made a solo dark ambient project by the name of Diagnose Lebensgefahr. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Skeptics on either side of the spectrum can believe whatever they want, but in the grand scheme of things, I think that part of the reason that Nattramn and Silencer are so special in the DSBM scene is the anonymity of it, because while so many black metal, especially solo black metal projects, have always centered themselves around anonymity and intrigue and mystery and coldness and detachment, Nattramn took it to the next level by applying all of these different storytelling techniques. But he is a very troubled individual, and chalking all of this stuff up to just a hoax is pretty dismissive of the shit that he went through and the shit that he clearly was going through in his head, because even though a lot of these things aren't true, they are adjacent to the truth enough to where you gotta pay a little bit of respect to that. It truly is rare that the black metal community gets an artist or gets a project that for so long is still widely debated on. I think the only ones that would even rival it would be like the bands that came out of the Middle East and like Lebanon, and I think there's been some from like Iraq or Iran, and I think those are fantastic. They breathe life into the genre. They add this level of controversy and polarization, and it gets people talking.
talking. So at the end of the day, you can believe whatever you want to believe, because ultimately, in the end, these things are subjective in many ways. This is just made up of a bunch of factoids and things that I found across the internet, people that have been witnesses to stuff, people who've seen stuff online, and I wanted to keep this as surface level as possible because I didn't want to go super in-depth just speculating, because in the end, does that not add to the very thing that we're trying to debunk, which is, who is Nattramn? Where did he come from? Where is he now? What is true or false about the story itself? And I just think it's fun to have these sort of discussions and stories in the black metal community because they make for some of the most interesting conversations the community has to offer. So in the same way that some old head jaded person is willing to say, oh, look at what the newfound black metal fans are looking at and thinking is so mysterious, we debunked that a long time ago, there is no right or wrong answer for it because you can enjoy it or you cannot. And while Silencer is a very controversial project in the grand scheme of things, it is pretty surface level and most people know it at this point, but that doesn't mean that there isn't still some fun to be had with it.
What are your opinions of this? Do you think that Nattramn and Silencer was a hoax? What do you think is true versus not? And is there any evidence you'd like to bring to the table that you think counteracts something that was either said in this video or said in general? You can let me know down below. I can't wait to hear it. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.